And we all, we've been focusing on non-small cell, but, we all work in thoracic clinics and we see a few other thoracic malignancies. And one of the historically frustrating diseases we deal with is mesothelioma. Mm-hmm. And so, Anne, your insights of immunotherapy in meso, because I think it's an unmet need.
Yes, absolutely. So mesothelioma, we do believe, is an immunogenic tumor. There's been some recent publications and presentations that suggest that they do see upregulation of PD-L1 in the tumor tissue, and we're doing a large international tumor collection registry from SWOG with the Hope Foundation to actually look at this to see across the world if this is expressed in the tumor cells or in the TILs. Certainly we have a couple of trials. There's some in the metastatic setting. There's also in the salvage setting a tremelimumab versus placebo trial that hopefully will show it's met its accrual and its enrollment endpoint, and so we hopefully will get data from that very soon. But certainly we also have a SWOG trial that's a neoadjuvant study with the MPDL 3280 that will be looking at the combination of neoadjuvant therapy, surgical resection, radiation, and then also a maintenance immunotherapy afterwards. So I think the field is rapidly developing with immunotherapy, but certainly it's a disease type that desperately needs new targeted agents.
And I'd like to put a plug in for thymic malignancies.
I was going there next.
Okay, great. Good. So that's also an area where there's a lot of unmet need and a lot of trials in development and discussions. So where Roy is at Yale, Frank Dedermeck has started the International Thymic Malignancies Interest Group, or ITMIG, which is trying to spearhead some global initiatives looking at thymic malignancies, but in the theory of immunotherapy being particularly active in that disease as well. Thymomas, of course, are associated with autoimmune diseases on their own, and so there's a lot of caution looking at thymomas, and so most of the first forays into immunotherapy with the checkpoint inhibitors are going to focus more on thymic carcinoma, and then looking at those results kind of cautiously moving into some of the thymoma patients that don't have any evidence of autoimmune disease, but that's going to limit the activity there.
And small cell.
Yeah, that's what I was raising my hand for. We've seen activity in small cell patients with these agents, not been published yet, but I think there's clearly going to be activity there in selected patients. And small cell is a disease where we're still using the same treatments. Mark and I were talking about our fellowship. We were a few years apart at the same place. We were using cisplatin, etoposide then, and we still are now. So we need some of these new agents, and I think that there is going to be activity in small cell.
This has been a great discussion. We've reviewed and discussed lots of information on the treatment of advanced non-small cell lung cancer as well as a few other malignancies. To close, I'd like to get final thoughts from each of the panelists. Dr. Herbst?
Yes, thanks. So this has been a very interesting discussion. What I take away is, we're certainly making progress in this disease. And the fact that we have identified mutations where we can target with specific drugs is a huge advance. Of course, resistance is the major problem. And how to target this resistance is something we all need to constantly work on in clinical trials to improve. And I think we've seen now that for EGFR and ALK-driven tumors, we do have next generation drugs that can target resistance, and we're going to have to continue to look for newer agents in the future. Immunotherapy, clearly, paradigm shifting. It really does help patients. I think we've all shared our experience. We've seen that. But it creates some issues. It's still only working for about 20–25% of the patients. We need to figure out how to benefit more. We can't just give these drugs to everyone if we don't understand how they're going to benefit or if they're going to benefit, because there are some unique toxicities, which, while manageable, we need to be tuned in for. And then finally, I think we need to look to the future. There are many more drugs that are not matched with their targets. For those patients, we need clinical trial design, such as the Lung Cancer Master Protocol, the NCI MATCH trial, Alchemist, ways that we can find drugs to give to patients when we know their genomic profile, and then, of course, think about how to integrate the immunotherapy into all these different areas.
Anne?
So I'd like to just echo what Dr. Herbst was mentioning. We need these patients to go on to trial because lung cancer is not one disease. I mean, it's pretty much hundreds of diseases with all these molecular subtypes. And it's critical that we get these patients screened, whether or not they're adeno, squames, neuroendocrines. all of these patients need to have screening done ultimately. And although we have what we call the actionable targeted mutations now, where we have drugs that we can use up front, ultimately, hopefully, we will find a genetic driver for many of these patients. And that will require that we put patients onto trials now. So the main cooperative group studies are open through the CTSU. They're available throughout the nation. And so hopefully people will enroll to these very crucial studies.
Heather?
Again, would like to very much echo what's already been said, but also to emphasize, going back to the very beginning of our discussion about getting tissue, I think what the future is going to hold is being able to do more serum analyses, hopefully, and not have to do these repeated biopsies, but have other ways of continuing to assess what's happening. But that the treatment of the past of just, oh, you've got lung cancer, here's chemotherapy, is behind us. And we're moving more and more and more into, for each patient, doing very detailed analyses of the tumor to help pick the specific therapies, and whether that's just molecularly targeted when we can get to that, which is great. For the immune therapies, we've got a ways to go before we understand what that exact biomarker is going to be, but we're heading in that direction. But I think for all patients, that's where we're heading, and it's going to go away from repeat needles to being able to do serum assays, but we're not quite at that point. And to just, again, emphasize the importance of participation in trials, that's how we're able to learn more about how to treat our patients now, but also the patients of the future.
Tom?
Well, I'd like to echo what other people have said. I think it's a case where yesterday's successes are today's challenges, and I think we've made logarithmic progress. I think as I look to the future, I think we'll get more efficient in the use of the biopsies we get, and as we narrow down the biomarkers that are most relevant. I think the liquid biopsies are a very promising avenue for further development and maybe early detection of resistance. I also think that our trial designs undergoing a quantum leap in terms of the adaptive designs, the different cohorts, like the master protocol, where you can open one trial and have 4 or 5 different cohorts to enroll patients on. And I think that you're going to see a lot more improvements in our trial design, which will make do the most important thing is bring these drugs more efficiently to our patients outside the trial.
Yeah, and you know, if you had asked me over 2 decades ago when I started in lung cancer, you know, would we have made this much progress in terms of our knowledge of the biology? Someone said it earlier. I think we should disband the word non-small cell lung cancer. This is several different diseases that we think very differently about. One size does not fit all. And it's, you know, for those of us in lung cancer, it's been a fascinating journey in doing this. And ultimately, all of these advances help our patients, and we need to continue that. So on behalf of our panel, we'd like to thank you for joining us, and we hope you found this peer exchange informative and educational. Thank you.